First, there was Donkey and Diddy Kong, then Diddy and Dixie, Dixie and Kitty, Banjo and Kazooie. Okay, you get the point. It's a John Lovitz joke I'm doing here. If there's one thing you might know about me, it's that platformers are my favorite video game genre. I've been craving for some new 3D platform games for a few years now, and they seem to be making a comeback of sorts lately, with Playtonic Games' Yooka-Laylee having the most buzz surrounding it. While of course I was excited for the game and had a lot of faith in the studio behind it, I also did my best to keep said excitement at a normal level as to not have unrealistic expectations and then later be let down if they weren't met. I also got to play Yooka a good week before the general public via review copy, first time that's ever happened, which is pretty cool, and I really got to take my time with it and not be influenced by others' opinions. And do I think Yooka-Laylee managed to hit the mark it was going for, being a worthy throwback to Banjo? Well, yes and no, but mostly yes. So first let's go over what this game gets right. True to form, the main cast of characters are all memorable and have a quirky sense of charm to them. Everything about Capital B, from design to personality, made for a great villain, and I grew to like the main duo too. Even though they are basically Banjo and Kazooie, I think they have just enough going for them to set themselves apart from the Baron Bird. The game's music is also great, being composed by a trifecta of rare talent. Grant Kirkhope did the lion's share of the soundtrack, with David Wise and Steve Burke bringing up the rear, and they all do a bang-up job once again. With Yooka, Grant goes for a more atmospheric approach as opposed to Banjo's more melodic tunes, and I was curious to hear how that'd play out in a game like this, but rest assured it works just fine. The track for Capital Casino was a real standout, and Ivory Towers has been stuck in my head in the months leading up to the game's release and long after I finished the game. This is a great soundtrack, no question. The humor and dialogue still has that cheeky sense of rare flair, and there were a number of times where I got a good laugh in, from dumb puns to cracks about quality assurance even. The dialogue noises were also pretty good, my personal favorites being Yooka's, Dr. Puzz's, and Capital B's. The one nitpick I had was that when going through dialogue, there wasn't a way to speed through it like in Banjo. You either have to let it move very slowly to hear the sounds, or skip ahead and not hear a thing, but again, that's just a minor nitpick. I'd say that one of the best aspects of Yooka-Laylee was the scope of the worlds you play through. Being able to look far out on the horizon and seeing that yes, you could actually go to that place way out there is a feeling that never gets old, and nothing felt off limits. I also just liked exploring and walking around, seeing what could be uncovered without knowing where it all was, figuring it out at the seat of my pants, figuratively speaking, cause Yooka don't wear no pants. Yooka-Laylee also has cases of sequence breaking throughout the adventure. You know, getting to places in a way clearly not intended by the developers, like jumping on certain kinds of platforms or taking advantage of a glitch. It's something I've always loved doing with 3D platformers, and it was pretty awesome to do it again with this game. In terms of the basics, Yooka-Laylee has things figured out, though there are a few things that can occasionally bring the game down. Often there's very little direction given to you in a world, which leads to times when you come across an objective and you may not know what to do. The level design is a bit weird that way, especially in the first two worlds, which are easily the biggest in the whole game. As I said earlier, I do like the freedom of exploring and finding things on your own, but sometimes you'll just be left saying to yourself, okay, I've done everything I can find, where do I go now? I'm missing 5 pages, but where do I even begin to look? I swear I've been everywhere. I feel like this could have been mitigated with something like a checklist with vague little titles, some type of map, or maybe a warp system for certain areas like in Banjo-Tooie or Donkey Kong 64. And although there is tons to do in a given world, at the same time a lot of areas in a level can feel a little on the empty side. Tribal Stack Tropics is big and sprawling, but enemies are few and far between, sparsely sprinkled in little pockets, which made the place seem a bit uninhabited. One other place where Yooka-Laylee loses momentum is in its extra modes, which aren't as fun as the main platforming. When I heard the game was going to have minecart segments, I was really excited as it sounded like they were taking a page right out of Donkey Kong Country. But they weren't very exciting, going at a very relaxed pace, and were just there for the most part. Nothing like the ones in Donkey Kong, though I do like Kartos himself. Same feeling goes for Rextro and his old school arcade games, which I was hoping would have an actual retro look, but sadly they don't. The games themselves were hit and miss, though they all played alright, nothing that was outright bad. But now I'm going to get into what really got on my nerves. Some of the simplest of tasks in this game could be very frustrating because of one thing or another, or a combination of things. For example, in World 2's Gloomy Gem Grotto, I had to get through the dark cave full of enemies with a limited energy bar, a janky camera, and ice physics, and if I died once, it had to be done all over again. What should have been a short little section took me 15 minutes to get through for a single pagey, and I was going nuts. This kind of stuff happened very often in the first two worlds especially, and as a result, the game started out pretty awkwardly for me, and I didn't know if I was gonna end up liking it. Which really really scared me. The worst offender in the first world was the boss battle, but I was not a big fan of Glitter Glaze Glacier overall. Stuff like that grotto and the castle maze left a bad taste in my mouth. I felt that World 3 was a great step up from what came before though. All the best parts of Yooka-Laylee culminated here, and it's where I started getting a real groove for the game. Ironic that a place called Moody Maze Marsh had a good sense of direction, and the game does end off really strong as well. Without going into spoilers, the final boss made for a great finale and puts your skills to the test, much like the Gruntilda battles that inspired it. All these mixed aspects of the game lead me into my next point, about Yooka-Laylee's overall sense of polish. It's definitely there, but the problem is that it's not consistent. On one hand, the D-pad has 5 idle animations assigned to it for Yooka and Laylee, just for the heck of it. I've never seen that before. On the flip side, when eating the cannonballs that make you heavy, I have expected my footsteps to make clanging sounds. And in World 2, the snow under the truck transformation stayed in place as I drove through it, or rather floated along its surface. Not a big deal all things considered, but it's something I'm just used to seeing. I know the folks at Playtonic are all about detail, so I'm guessing it was likely not to go over their budget, coupled with the fact that it was made in a Unity engine, but it's still a shame that they couldn't go all out. The Xbox One version of the game, the version I played, runs at 30 frames per second unlike 60 FPS on PC, and that can be chalked up to the fact the console versions were outsourced, though I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. It barely crossed my mind after an hour in, and it's perfectly playable, but it would have been nice. And the game was reported to suffer from some serious glitches on the Xbone, but whatever was there isn't there anymore. Frame rate issues would pop up from time to time when I played, but only for a split second, and they didn't bother me too much. And it never got as bad as Banjo-Tooie on the N64. Try playing that game at 10 FPS and then talk to me about frame rate issues. And the camera could get pretty weird in some enclosed spaces, but it did its job for the most part. I know I've been extremely critical with this game, though it's only because I want to be completely honest with my experience. But for as many shortcomings it may have had, when push came to shove, I had more fun with Yooka-Laylee than I didn't have fun. It's got heart to it, and the good really did outweigh the bad. But I had seen a few reviews claiming that the reason Yooka-Laylee was flawed is because of the genre it falls in, that the 3D platformer scene is old and outdated, and to that notion, allow me to say what Playtonic couldn't and say that is a bunch of crap. Platformers have just as much of a place in gaming as any other genre, and I say that any faults that come with an individual game are not the fault of the entire category. And I'm gonna bring up Banjo again to illustrate my point. I don't think Banjo-Kazooie is an outdated game. On the contrary, I say it holds up extremely well. And this is coming from someone who has no real nostalgic attachment to Banjo, at least not as much as some other people out there. I first played it in 2011 and had an absolute blast, and I still play it and Tooie at least once a year. And for the people who hype up games and grace them as the almighty chosen ones, you need to remember that you can't count your chickens before they hatch. And not to hype yourself up to the point where you say the game's not amazing because you suddenly think 3D platformers weren't great in the first place. But that's not another knock on Yooka-Laylee. I'm not going to undermine all the hard work and collaboration that went into this game just because it's a little rough around the edges. So I gotta say, Yooka-Laylee is interesting. When it gets things right, it's a lot of fun, and when it starts to lose direction and focus, that's where it gets less fun for me. Though amidst all its issues, I still eagerly looked forward to the next play session to see what other stuff the game had in store, and I ended up enjoying myself overall. I still say that the Banjo games are the better platformers, but Yooka-Laylee is still a fun time. It just has a couple of kinks that needed to be ironed out. Whether you haven't played a 3D platformer in years and you're looking for a game that'll tickle that nostalgic itch, or you aren't super nostalgic for Banjo but still love it all the same, I recommend giving Yooka-Laylee a go. I also suggest that you don't take my word as the final say. Depending on who you are and what you were expecting, you may get more out of this game or you may get less out of it. This is really one of those games where you gotta form your own opinion on it. I mean, that's why the general consensus is split to begin with. To the folks at Playtonic, I say you guys did deliver on your promise of a throwback platforming adventure. And when it's time for a sequel, I hope/know you guys will build on this game's foundation to make it even better. I personally hope you call it Yooka-Tuka. Everybody else wants Tooka-Laylee, but I think Yooka-Tuka sounds nicer. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed what you saw. So if you did, feel free to give this video a like, share it with a friend, subscribe, check out my social media links, all that good stuff. And if you're new here, feel free to check out some of the videos on screen right here. I mean, I really liked them. Hopefully you will too. And an extended thank you to Team 17 for giving me a review code for Yooka-Laylee. I've never gotten to play a video game before the general public, so thank you. That was really cool. And with all that said, I will see you guys next time. Later. By the way, I wasn't sure if this was important or not, but I'd still take this game over Jak 2 any day of the week.